What's up guys, TSJAwesome 628 here, back again with another F1 2020 My Team Career Mode video, this time for the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. In the last episode of the Monaco Grand Prix, we ended up coming out on top despite a late spin, and we did manage to beat our teammate even though we were on the 2-stop and had to do some overtaking. Hopefully we can continue our winning streak, which has now been extended to 5 races in a row. This time out of the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. Our car should go well around here, but then it should go well around every track. I'm not sure though whether I'll be able to beat my teammate though. So, going straight into things, we're going to just upgrade the car from the failure that occurred, and we have some activities that we decided to go with to benefit many of the different aspects of the team. And as we go through onto the laptop, the weather forecast is completely dry and it's completely sunny all weekend. Apparently no cloud. So in that sense, with optimal conditions, hopefully we'll be able to do well. Looking at the vehicle performance comparison, Racing Point have now moved up to second, so maybe we'll see some challenges from them for the lead, or at least trying to beat the Mercedes, because they still haven't got a podium yet this season. And that was something I'll probably be hoping to do, as we also received some power unit upgrades from Mercedes. Obviously, the top 3 teams now are all Mercedes-powered cars. So it just shows that they do have the best engine on the grid in our career mode save. After practice, we had enough resource points to put another upgrade on the car, and we decided to go with aerodynamics upgrade, and I was debating whether to go for drag reduction or DRS, and in the end I decided to go with a drag reduction upgrade for the car. So that will come in the next couple of races. Now we're going to head on to qualifying and see what we are able to do, and whether we can get pole position. So on to our first lap now, and in Q1 it's just generally about getting in a clean and solid lap, and with Baku there are so many walls around, so it is very much easier said than done around this track, but we do manage it on this lap in particular. As we come round the fast-paced S section as the final corners of this track, we now have probably the longest straight in F1 as we head towards the line. Pierre Gasly currently going fastest, but we beat his time to be fastest in the session. So as we fast forward towards the end of the session, we're moved down to P9, with Ricciardo topping the session by some distance over Mercedes and Racing Point, so Lewis Hamilton and Lance Stroll. And Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc get ahead of the other Racing Point of Giovinazzi. Going out in the session were the 2 Haas cars, 2 Williams cars and 2 Alfa Romeos, so Haas couldn't build on their points last time out to continue with their good performance and get through to Q2. The McLarens did just about make it through, with the only 2 cars really in danger of going out to one of those cars, as all the others were very safely through. So as we're going to head on to the next session, and we're going to see if the McLarens can pick up the pace or which other cars will be going out in Q2. So for our first and probably only lap of Q2, we will just again try and make sure we don't hit any barriers, setting a purple sector 2 in the process, and it's just about setting a clean lap as it was in Q1. We don't need to unleash maximum pace yet, as all we are trying to do is get through to the final session, and we do go quicker than we did last time, and it is a 1:36.4, so that's currently fastest in the session. But as we fast forward to the end of Q2, Ricciardo ends up fastest by 0.2 over us, and then come Lewis Hamilton, Lance Stroll, Max Verstappen, Antonio Giovinazzi, Valtteri Bottas, Sergio Perez, Sebastian Vettel and Pierre Gasly who also make it through to the final session. So no spaces in there for either McLaren's Esteban Ocon, Alex Albon, Charles Leclerc, or Danny Kvyat. So Charles Leclerc, after getting a podium in his home Grand Prix last time out, would have hoped for better, but is only going to line up 15th tomorrow on the grid. So now we're just going to head into Q3 and see whether we can cut down the deficit to our teammates and take pole at the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. We will also wait and see if the Racing Points and Mercedes are the cars lining up just behind us on the grid, or whether there are some upsets from the Red Bull of Max Verstappen or some of the other drivers that could get up there. So as we head into our first lap in Q3, now it's about time that we need to try and set as quick a lap as possible. But our Q2 lap was actually pretty good, despite the fact I was mainly just trying to keep it clean. 1:36.4 was pretty good. Obviously it was only 2/10 behind Daniel Ricciardo, but we do need to try and go about 2/10 quicker if we want to take pole position in this Grand Prix. So as we head up towards the line, we do manage to set a 1:36.4 again, and at the moment it's provisional pole, but I am assuming that Ricciardo will be able to beat it at some point. So as we head later on in the session, Ricciardo is slotted in just behind us actually, so we are currently in a good position to take pole position, and as we head on to our final lap, Ricciardo has indeed gone quicker, so we do need to get this 5/10 improvement that we're going to get on the board, otherwise we will not get pole position. He is set at 1:36.2 as he did in Q2, so this 5/10 should be enough for pole position, and as you cross the line it is indeed enough to take pole position.
We're all ready for tomorrow's race, but before we begin, let's have a quick look at those who will be fronting the grid. Thomas, Ricciardo and Valtteri Bottas. Well, that wraps up qualifying, but don't worry, we'll be back tomorrow as we head into the Grand Prix.
So we take pole position 2/10 ahead of our teammate Daniel Ricciardo, and we're a second ahead of the two Mercedes cars that are going to line up in 3rd and 4th tomorrow, with Sergio Perez managing to beat the two Racing Points to 5th and 6th. So Perez will start 5th, then Stroll, and then Giovinazzi. And then further back we have Vettel in 8th, Verstappen in 9th, and Pierre Gasly will round out the top 10. And he couldn't really get a good lap in this session. He was 6/10 slower than the next car ahead of him, which was Max Verstappen. So hopefully for his sake, he'll have slightly better pace in the race. And as it is Baku, it is very easy to overtake around here, but as well as that, there's often a lot of crashes and chaos due to all the walls that are nearby here, so it'll be very exciting to see what does indeed happen in the race tomorrow.
Time to see how our drivers are stacking up after yesterday's exciting qualifying session. Thomas lines up on pole position and P2 goes to Daniel Ricciardo. A strong showing from the Australian. Moving on to the rest of the grid, we have Bottas, Hamilton, Sergio Perez and Stroll, Giovinazzi, Vettel, Verstappen and Pierre Gasly, Sainz, Ocon, Alexander Albon and Norris, Leclerc, Kvyat, George Russell and Kevin Magnussen, Latifi, De Vries, Grosjean and Jack Aitken.
So we are once again going to go for the 2-stop here at the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, and hopefully it will be a good strategy and we'll be able to use the pace we should have in the car to overcome the people that are on the 1-stop. But as the race is about to start now and slightly set on away we go, we do get a better start than Daniel Ricciardo, unlike we did the Monaco Grand Prix, and at the track it's probably less important to stay in front. We keep the lead into turn 1 as Perez makes a move on Hamilton further back, but we're just going to hold on to the position, and we do know that the AI always like to run higher engine modes on the first lap, so we do need to try and keep him behind. And as we come towards the end of lap 1, we are 8/10 ahead of Ricciardo, so we are able to keep the position and hopefully we'll be able to start pulling away. But as we head on to the end of lap 2, and Ricciardo from behind us has just smashed into the wall there. He must have lost control of the car somewhere here, and we're going to go backwards to see what did indeed happen to Ricciardo. And as we move further backwards, we're going to ride on board with him again. And as we go through this left section, I think he's just in my slipstream so much. And as we move into the corner, he just loses the back end. And he smashes into the wall and loses his entire front wing. And that is not good news for our teammates. And it's a dreadful mistake from him. And he's going to have to come into pits and change his new front to a new front wing. And, well, he's pretty much out of this race now. And he's going to have to perform a massive comeback if he wants to get anything. Now further back, we're looking at Alex Albon battling Carlos Sainz here. And Alex Albon is going to pull to the inside. And he's going to try and overtake Carlos Sainz into turn 1 here. He should have the pace on the McLaren in that Red Bull. But Sainz will fight back, even though he's on hard tyres when Albon is on softs. And Sainz is going to try and keep it around the outside. And as we move further on down the straight, there's also the Renault of Esteban Ocon who's trying to get involved, and he's going to try and make it 3 wide into turn 3, but Sainz and Albon look to keep around the outside, and Carlos Sainz looks to have held his position with Alex Albon just behind and Esteban Ocon just behind them. As we move to the end of lap 3 now, we're pulling away from Bottas, who is now in second, with obviously Ricciardo having crashed early on. And now we're looking at the other Mercedes, Lewis Hamilton, who is looking for a move on Sergio Perez, who obviously overtook him at the start, but Hamilton will now, in his quicker car, get past the Renault round the outside into turn 1, and it's a simple move in the end, and now the 2 racing points are going to be having a look at them shortly. Now back to Alex Albon here, who take 2 of him trying to pass Carlos Sainz, and again he's going to go into turn 1 just behind, but he's going to try and keep it around the outside this time, and this time he's going to hope that while Carlos Sainz held on around the outside last time, he will be able to take the move around the outside, and indeed he does. And now Carlos Sainz is going to be looking to battle Esteban Ocon behind, as he doesn't want to lose 2 positions going into this corner, but Esteban Ocon will try and go around the outside, and he will take the position. And Carlos Sainz has now lost 2 positions on this lap to both Alex Albon and Esteban Ocon. And now Charles Leclerc and his teammate Lando Norris are just behind him, also going to be trying to overtake him. On to the end of lap 4 now, and the gap to Bottas is 4.3 seconds. So we are slowly extending it, and we're going to need to if we want to be on the 2-stop. But now it's Lance Stroll's turn to have a go at Sergio Perez, and as they head into turn 1, Lance Stroll is going to go to the outside. He did have a slight wobble on the exit, but he has kept his nose in there around the outside and warranted the space on Sergio Perez. And Lance Stroll is going to still try and keep it around the outside into turn 3. They're keeping it side by side for so long that Giovinazzi is also sensing an opportunity to get Sergio Perez, and Giovinazzi will also pull to the outside into turn 3. And Giovinazzi, as they head into turn 3, is ahead of Perez. So both racing points make a move on the Renault and are up to 4th and 5th in this race. At the end of lap 5, we're going to be coming into the pits for our first pit stop, so we'll see where in traffic this puts us. But obviously it is Baku and it's easy to overtake, so unlike Monaco, the traffic shouldn't do too much damage to us, and it may even help us by giving us some DRS on the way as we move past certain drivers. There was quite a big gap to come out into, as Albon, Ocon and Sainz have been fighting and falling back from Max Verstappen, so we do actually have quite a lot of clear track to Max Verstappen ahead, who is 6 seconds up the road, and Alex Albon is 1.7 behind as he has pulled away from Carlos Sainz. But obviously as this was happening, we're now going to be on board with both Max Verstappen and Pierre Gasly. As I said, Max Verstappen was the one just ahead of us, and that's because on this lap he had been overtaken by Pierre Gasly into turn 1, as Pierre Gasly goes up the inside and takes the position as you see us in the pits in the background. And looking on further back, I said that Carlos Sainz is the one directly behind Alex Albon, so therefore he was going to continue his battle with Esteban Ocon, and he's going to pull to the outside to try and make that move around the outside, and indeed he does, and they have allowed Albon to get away from this fight, but Carlos Sainz does gain the position, and now Charles Leclerc is going to look to put pressure on the Renault of Esteban Ocon, and Ocon will try and hold on into turn 3, and Leclerc does not quite have the run to be able to get through. But now we're on board with the 2 Racing Points, who just ahead of us, this is on the next lap, are going to go side by side, and Antonio Giovinazzi is going to try and go round the outside of his teammate Lance Stroll, and he is going to gain the position, so this is probably for a net P4 in this race, behind the 2 Mercedes and me, and if one of us slips up, there's always a podium chance, so Giovinazzi does take the position from his teammate Lance Stroll, and he's looking good in this race. As we move on to lap 6, we set a purple middle sector, trying to catch up to the cars ahead of us, but many of them are coming into the pits this lap, and it seems that only Verstappen, Hamilton and the Racing Points are the ones that stayed out, as we now go on board with Charles Leclerc, who has overtaken Esteban Ocon pretty early on in this straight, and is going to take the position into turn 1, but Ocon will try and fight back round the outside, but he doesn't have enough of a run, and Leclerc will take the position to move up. So Ocon is starting to struggle as he's lost positions to both Sainz and Leclerc in consecutive laps. Now we're going to move on to trying to overtake Max Verstappen here, but he is going to pull into the pits anyway, so we'll just take some of the slipstream and the DRS, and we're going to cross the line to set the fastest lap of the race. And as we head through turn 1, we are now just behind Antonio Giovinazzi, and Alex Albon is just behind us, but they haven't stopped yet, so our nearest challenger, Lewis Hamilton, who will be on the 1 stop, is 11.5 seconds behind us. And so we move on towards the end of the lap. Charles Leclerc is now trying to overtake Carlos Sainz, so after overtaking Esteban Ocon, he has found some pace in this race, and is going to go around the outside of Carlos Sainz into turn 1, and takes the position. So this is probably for a net lower end of the points, as Lance Stroll is going to come out of the pits, and is going to go side by side with Sebastian Vettel, who has jumped Sergio Perez in this race and has now also tried to jump Lance Stroll. So Lance Stroll could lose 2 positions here from being undercut by both Perez and Vettel here, as Perez is going to try and go round the outside and regain the position on him, and Perez does so. So these were battling for a net P5, and maybe if Giovinazzi pits now, he'll also be coming out around this area, as Giovinazzi is really struggling on these tyres and he goes defensive on us, but we managed to go round the outside into the last braking corner, and as we head through for the rest of the lap, we do now take the lead of the Grand Prix, and it's just about trying to extend the gap to where Lewis Hamilton is, so that when we make our second pit stop, we do have to overtake as little cars as possible, or preferably none at all. But now we're going to be on board with Alex Albon here, as he heads through the penultimate corner, and he's made a massive mistake here, and he's binned it in the wall, the similar section to where Lance Stroll binned it in real life, but he's much earlier, and this was all his own mistake though, and he's going to cause a massive pile up of cars just behind him, and they're all just parking here, and Alex Albon is blocking the entire straight here, and this will cause a lot of damage to some of these cars, and I think many of them will probably have to pit for new front wings, so we're going to go on board and we're going to see who does have to pit here. And as we move on, it seems like Sergio Perez, along with Alex Albon, obviously is going to pit, as is Lance Stroll just behind him, and as is our teammate Daniel Ricciardo, who's just behind them. So Daniel Ricciardo, this time for no fault of his own, has damage, and 4 cars, including Alex Albon, will have to pit when they were running in good positions because of the mistake from the tie Brit. But now on board with Carlos Sainz here, who's going to try and go round the outside of Antonio Giovinazzi, who has just pitted here. And Giovinazzi, if he had come out ahead of Carlos Sainz, would have been in a brilliant position to just take home that podium just behind Hamilton and myself, as Bottas was also caught up in that massive pile-up, although he didn't have to pit for repairs. And now Giovinazzi has Carlos Sainz just ahead of him, and he wants to make short work of him. so that he can claim that spot, because he doesn't want to let Leclerc get away, even though Leclerc still has to make one more pit stop. So round the outside into turn 1, well, he doesn't even need to go round the outside into turn 1, so he's already there ahead. But now George Russell is trying to get involved in this pack, and he's going to go round the outside of Lando Norris into turn 1. So George Russell overtakes his fellow Brit, and now Sebastian Vettel is going to try and overtake Lando Norris into turn 3, and Vettel's got a better run, and he's going to have the better line into turn 3 as he goes round the outside and overtakes Lando Norris, and moves up in a position in this Grand Prix. And pretty much all of those drivers there have a chance of points in this race, as they're all running in good positions. As we're on board with our teammate Daniel Ricciardo, who is going to try and make quick work of Alex Albon, who obviously made the mistake, and they're both fighting lower down the order than they'd have both wanted to be. But Ricciardo does take the position on Alex Albon and is trying to make as quick a comeback as he possibly can. As we move on to back to us at the end of lap 10, we are 15 seconds ahead of Lewis Hamilton, so we're just going to try and extend the gap, because we want to probably be about 20 seconds when we come into the pits. So now back on board with Esteban Ocon here, who is going to go for a move on Carlos Sainz once again. These two have been fighting the entire race, and once again Esteban Ocon will be past Carlos Sainz, and both of these drivers are looking good for a roughly 5th place finish when it comes to the end of the race. And now back on board with us as we move to lap 12. We've extended the gap now to 18.3 seconds over Lewis Hamilton, and it's just been about push time, and we're gaining over a second a lap, sometimes even 2 seconds a lap on Hamilton. And as we come towards the end of lap 13, the gap has trickled over to the 20-second mark, and that is very good news for us, because that probably means we can make a pit stop in this race and come out, if not side by side with him, maybe just ahead of him. But nothing much happened in these few laps except for me just pushing and pushing and pushing. So now it's time again for us to pit again. So after we've extended the gap to 22.5 seconds to Lewis Hamilton, we're going to come into the pits and make our final pit stop in this race, and hopefully we're just going to come out in the lead, and we'll be on the quicker tyres, so we'll be able to pull away and just finish off this race in style, and not have to have loads of overtakes being made. And indeed, as we come out the exit of the pits, Lewis Hamilton is nowhere near us, and we've got about a 6-second gap to him, and that should be very good for us in the race to keep hold of and hopefully hold on to the win. Now on board with Lance Stroll here, who is trying to make a move on Sergio Perez. Obviously both of these two had damage from the Albon incident, so they both are much further back. They originally were fighting over 4th early on in the race, but now they're fighting for about 16th. But Lance Stroll is going to try and overtake Sergio Perez, and as he goes round the outside into turn 2, Ricciardo is also just behind them, looking to make a move on them as they head towards turn 3, but Lance Stroll will stay ahead of both Perez and Ricciardo. As we move on to lap 16, we're setting purple sectors again. Obviously we can't set a fastest lap because we just pitted that lap, but moving on towards Sebastian Vettel here, and he is looking to have a move on Carlos Sainz in the McLaren, and he is going to go round the outside into turn 1. Vettel's fresher tyres having already made a stop in this race, whereas Carlos Sainz hasn't. So Vettel is looking like he's in a good position this race as he heads round the outside into turn 2 and overtakes the McLaren driver and moves up to, I think, P5 in this Grand Prix. But as we move on board with Valtteri Bottas now, who is trying to overtake Lando Norris just behind, and he successfully does so in this race, which means that he also moves up to just behind the Vettel and Sainz battle. And just behind this battle, there's another battle of Leclerc and Pierre Gasly, who are going to go side by side into turn 1. and Leclerc is going to go round the outside, and so will make it 2 Ferraris overtaking 2 drivers in this lap so far, and they'll both move up in this Grand Prix to higher positions. Now on board with Daniel Ricciardo, and he is trying to overtake Sergio Perez after Lance Stroll did it a couple of laps ago. And this lap Ricciardo breezes past Perez and is now going to try and catch up to Lance Stroll and maybe recover some lower end points in this race. Moving on to lap 17, we set a green sector 2, so hopefully we'll be able to set a new fastest lap in this Grand Prix, and indeed we do so by about 2 tenths, or exactly 2 tenths. But on lap 18 we're going to go even quicker, and after setting the green sector 1 we set a purple sector 2, and in sector 3 we're going to set another green sector and go 4 tenths quicker to set a 1:39.699. Now on board with Charles Leclerc here, and he's going to try and overtake Lando Norris, and he's going to try and do it in a really unorthodox spot as we head into the final complex of corners, but Lando Norris holds firm and stays ahead of the Monegasque driver, but Leclerc will still get DRS after they've gone through this S section, so he still should be able to make the move, but he has so much pace on his fresher medium tyres compared to Norris's older hard tyres, so Leclerc will take the position as we head onto the straight, as he pulls out of the slipstream and to the outside, and is going to go around the outside into turn 1, and he moves himself up into a good position, is just behind Bottas, Sainz and Vettel. Now on board with Lance Stroll, who has pitted again in this race and is now trying to overtake Alex Albon, who is just still very slow, so I think he must have some permanent damage, even if it's not on his front wing or something, because he's now a pit stop behind the racing point of Lance Stroll, and has come out behind Danny Kvyat. Albon has, as Kvyat splits both Stroll and Albon, so Stroll made that move, and it was necessary for him to do so that he didn't fall behind AlphaTauri as well. And now on lap 19, we're just extending the gap. We've already got the gap up to about 16 seconds over Lewis Hamilton. But Carlos Sainz is now trying to overtake George Russell, and this is for about 8th position, I believe. And Carlos Sainz will overtake George Russell into turn 1. Obviously he has a quicker car, he has fresher tyres, he has soft tyres, so it wasn't that hard a move. But George Russell is looking good for some points in this race due to all the chaos that has ensued earlier on. And Giovinazzi is looking good to be taking Racing Point's first podium of the season, but as we go on board with him, he's not looking so good to take Racing Point's first podium of the season, as there is smoke coming out from the back of his car, and what a shame for him. He thought he was going to be taking home a podium this race, but his engine has let go and he has had to park it out of the race now, and heartbreak for him, but maybe Vettel will be able to capitalise on this and take home the podium for Ferrari instead. Obviously Ferrari have 2 podiums so far this season with Charles Leclerc, but Vettel hasn't taken a podium yet this season, but Bottas is right on the back of Sebastian Vettel, and Vettel will have to do a really good defensive drive in the last 3 laps if he wants to keep this position. On board with Esteban Ocon now, and he is trying to overtake Max Verstappen for the lower end of the points here, and he has Carlos Sainz just behind both of them, so maybe Sainz and Ocon will resume their battle in a couple of laps' time, as Max Verstappen doesn't seem that quick in this race. He's just been overtaken by Ocon, and now Sainz is all over the back of him, and Sainz is looking for a move pretty quickly, but he doesn't quite have the straight line speed to overtake Verstappen into turn 3, and Verstappen will hold on for now. As we move on to the end of lap 23, Leclerc is also catching up to both Bottas and Vettel, so we may have a 3-way fight for the podium right at the end. And as we go on board back again with Carlos Sainz, he is looking to try and overtake Max Verstappen, and Leclerc tried an unorthodox overtake on Norris and it didn't quite work out, but Sainz is going to try one on Verstappen and it will work out, just showing how much more pace he has than the Red Bull car as they head through the final braking zone of the track, and Sainz is ahead, and now he just has Esteban Ocon ahead of him as they're going to battle for 6th position. Now on board with Valtteri Bottas though, and Sebastian Vettel's defence of 3rd place looks to be over as Bottas breezes past him on the straight and takes the final podium position with just 3 laps to go. So Vettel will not be able to hold on, it seems, as we head through the castle section as we lap Jack Aitken. So the 2 Williams cars, even with all the chaos, are not able to capitalise and get anywhere near the top 10, and they're both still going to be lapped in this race as we have Nick de Vries just in front of us. And as we head towards the end of the lap, we are going to be lapping Nick de Vries. So 2 laps to go now, and we've still got 2 battles left on track that I can think of straight away, with Vettel fighting Leclerc and Sainz fighting Ocon. But Nick de Vries will let us through into turn 2, and that will mean that we have lapped both Williams cars. We're not going to lap anyone else in this race, I don't think, because most of them have had decent pace or have moved up to higher positions where they probably shouldn't be. But now on board with both Ferraris here, and Charles Leclerc on his fresh and medium tyres has so much more pace than his teammate Sebastian Vettel, and Charles Leclerc is going to try and overtake Sebastian Vettel as they head into turn 1, and he will do so before they even get to turn 1. And now Leclerc has 2 laps to try and catch up to Bottas. He'll have quicker pace on his fresher tyres, but whether he is able to overtake is a different thing considering the number of laps left, as we have a moment on the exit of the final corner, but we managed to survive the scare and we keep control of the back end and keep the car pointing in the correct direction. So we're okay, and now on board with Carlos Sainz, who is looking for a move on Esteban Ocon. These two have been battling the entire race, but now on the final lap, well, going on to the final lap, they're going to go side by side for the position, and Carlos Sainz will take the position from Esteban Ocon, so he will win out in that battle eventually. They've probably overtaken each other twice each or 3 times each or something during this race, but Sainz looks to have come out on top, and now this is the last lap as well for these, or this is the penultimate lap for these guys, and it's Norris, Russell and Ricciardo, and Ricciardo is going to overtake Norris with DRS and then pull to the outside of George Russell, and Norris is now going to try and go up the inside of George Russell as well, but George Russell is going to try and keep it to the outside. Ricciardo is moving up to 9th, and Russell is now defending this last point from Lando Norris with his life, but Lando Norris is going to try and get a better exit here, and he's going to try and go and overtake George Russell. And Lando Norris is going to go round the outside of George Russell, and George Russell thought maybe he could claim some points, but Lando Norris has taken the points away from him at the last lap, and when you start the final lap in 9th position but don't get any points, you must be incredibly disappointed. But George Russell is not going to get any points this race as we go back on board us. We slightly hit the wall on the final lap, but it's okay as we have a 25-second lead, so we're just going to go on board with our car up into the line. We have dominated this Grand Prix. I thought there'd be challenge from Ricciardo, but obviously he made the mistake on lap 2, which sent him straight to the back, and he has recovered to get 2 points, but we will weave to the line, and we claim our 6th race victory in a row. So, brilliant job for us. Charles Leclerc probably deservedly wins driver of the day. We were speaking about how he started 15th, and he's recovered to 4th.
Approaching the podium right now. It's been an interesting Grand Prix, that's for sure.
So, let's look at the podium celebration, celebrating our 6th race win in a row, and I'm not sure how long the streak will last. We've got Canada up next, which I think I may be able to make it 7. I'm not sure. So it's obviously debatable.
Here's how things look in the drivers' table. Thomas increases their championship lead. Let's focus on the driver of the day. Anthony Davidson, who do you pick?
Charles Leclerc showed exactly how to manage yourself out on the track today. He was almost flawless out there. Incredible stuff.
Let's move on to the constructors. The current leaders continue to extend their lead at the top. Meanwhile, Ferrari have improved their position. A strong weekend from them as they fight their way towards the top. And with that, we wrap up another weekend of motorsport. But with more races lined up, be sure to join us when we come back with more Formula One.
So we managed to win the Grand Prix 26.5 seconds ahead of Hamilton, and we claimed fastest lap by about 1.5 seconds over the man in second and third. But Lewis Hamilton does finish second. He's already 20 seconds ahead of his teammate, who did recover from being caught up in that Albon incident, with Leclerc and Vettel rounding off a fine day for Ferrari in 4th and 5th. Carlos Sainz takes home his best result of the season in 6th, and Esteban Ocon brings home 7th after a great battle with Sainz most of the race. Verstappen had a very quiet race until he was being overtaken by Sainz and Ocon towards the end, and he finishes 8th, with our teammate Ricciardo recovering to 9th after overtaking 2 cars on the final lap. Lando Norris takes home 10th, just behind Ricciardo, and Pierre Gasly also pips George Russell to the line, but George Russell, after starting the final lap in 9th, will be very disappointed to not even take home a point. And Kevin Magnussen, it was P13 in the first Alfa Romeo. Perez and Stroll recovered to 14th and 15th, so disappointing for them. And Latifi 16th, Grosjean 17th, Kvyat 18th. Albon had a penalty and didn't do much, and just stayed in 19th, with the 2 Williams cars being the 2 cars that were lapped in this Grand Prix of Nick De Vries and Jack Aitken. And Antonio Giovinazzi rounded off a terrible day for Racing Point, which looked so promising at the start of the race, by DNFing, meaning their team scored no points that weekend. In the championship, we extend our lead to 70 points over Daniel Ricciardo, with Valtteri Bottas only 17 points behind him now in 3rd. Lewis Hamilton moves up to 4th, overtaking Lance Stroll, who failed to score, and Charles Leclerc overtakes Max Verstappen for 6th. Lando Norris is now in 8th with Giovinazzi. Giovinazzi could have pulled away massively on Lando Norris in this weekend, but Lando Norris holds on to that 8th position. Vettel moves up to 10th with his best result of the year, and Esteban Ocon moves up to 11th. Gasly, Perez and Albon are the big losers in that, with obviously Perez and Albon having terrible races, both due to Albon's collision. Sainz moves up to 15th with his best result of the year. He scored 4 times the amount of points in this race than he had previously done. Kvyat is 16th still on 4 points and disappointing. Grosjean stays on 2 points, and the rest of the drivers are yet to score. In the constructors, we lead Mercedes by 134 points, with Racing Points dropping further back from Mercedes now, and now are in the clutches of Ferrari and Red Bull, Ferrari have had a great 2 weekends to catch up. McLaren are solidifying that 6th position. They pulled away from Renault this weekend, and Renault, luckily didn't lose too much to AlphaTauri this weekend. I think they may have even gained with Ocon's good result. Haas stick in 9th position after their 2 points that they gained at the Monaco Grand Prix. Could have added to that total today, but they failed to do so because Russell couldn't keep his 9th position, and Alfa Romeo and Williams are still yet to score.
Where's my viewers? You took the top points today. Was it a comfortable win?
The competition would have come from my teammates, but in the end, because of our car and the fact that Ricciardo couldn't challenge me, we could dominate. Ferrari performed very well in the last 2 weekends, so yes. I did hit the wall once towards the end, and I did have a slight back end loss, so I think it was good that I just about managed to avoid getting lots of damage or losing the back end and spinning or crashing, so I'm glad to survive those instances. In the rivalry, we gain on Valtteri Bottas, and we should be able to end the rivalry and beat him in the next few races, as we are massively outperforming him. In terms of acclaim levels, as a team we stay level 17, I stay level 13 as a driver, and Ricciardo can't move up to level 15 because obviously he didn't have a good result this weekend. The bonuses, we're gaining 1.63 million a race due to them, but both of us have damage deductions this weekend, so not a great day for the team in terms of that, and we both lost roughly 100k in total. But our total is up to 17.71 million now, which is good news, and hopefully it will continue increasing so that we can make some upgrades along with re-signing Ricardo in the next few races. But that will be the end of the episode, and I'll see you guys next time for the Canadian Grand Prix.